Okay, everyone. Well, Shabbat Shalom. You guys are celebrating your Feast of Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, and I'm really excited to share today's teaching. As you can see, it's called The Why of It All, and it may even seem a bit of a pretentious title, but how can I put it? I believe that the Father is pouring out the knowledge of his ways. He's pouring out the deeper truths within his word. And I believe this is a sign of the times that we're in, as Daniel chapter 12 would say, that the knowledge of his ways shall increase as we approach the end of the age. And, this is an understanding, what I'm going to share with you guys, that I've probably been sat on for a few years now. And it's the kind of thing that may challenge people's religious journeys up until this point, and that's okay. I just ask, chew on it, chew on the cud, so to speak, see if these things be so. But one thing that I found is, the teaching I'm going to share today, it makes the faith so deep, even deeper than what we think it really is. I mean, who here has found that the more they grow on this journey, you just think, oh, wow, like the faith is so deep, it's so rich. His plan of redemption is just so incredible. And I hope today's going to be one of these teachings for you that will want you to dig deeper in the faith. And ultimately, what I want from this is that this will help you have a deeper intimacy with your King, and to, ask some of the deeper questions that mainstream religion tends not to address. We all have these burning questions about our faith, and we never seem to get the answers when we look for these. And I'm hoping to kind of go through some of these with you today. Again, the title, The Why of It All, I know it's a bold statement, but I will say this. It's actually, what we're going to cover today actually scratches the surface of our faith. But it does open the door to an avenue to start asking deeper questions and to really start understanding the why of our faith. And it's my personal belief that what we're going to cover today is not new revelation. I believe, in the sense that I believe the disciples of Yeshua and the Apostle Paul, what we're going to cover today, they knew it off the back of their hand. And as we're going to see, Paul clearly knew the things we're going to cover today. Is just that with almost 2,000 years of religion, coming in, and the doctrines of men and the leavening and the warnings that our Creator would give us, that this adversarial position would come in and muddy the truth of the faith, we're just playing catch up, okay? And again, the fact that we're playing catch up and these things are being rediscovered, I believe is really a telltale sign of the times that we're living in. That I honestly believe we're starting to see Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 come to pass, that knowledge shall increase. And if you look at the Hebrew in that verse, it actually says the knowledge shall increase. And you've got to think, well, what's the knowledge? I would argue it's the knowledge of the faith and these deeper truths. So let's just get stuck in. So just as a little bit of introduction, I was kind of mentioning that we have these deeper questions that we just do not seem to be able to get an answer for. Questions like, why would Elohim even create in the first place? Why would he set up, why would he create heaven? Why would he create earth? Is it because he's got some kind of complex that he needs adoration because apparently Elohim's got self-esteem issues? Obviously not. So why would Elohim even create in the first place if he hasn't got self-esteem issues? Why would he go? And again, you've got to think, we're currently in a fallen state, and the things and really the horrors that our fallen state can conjure up, why would Elohim even create in the first place, knowing that these things would occur? Because again, he knows the end from the beginning. He knew the state that his creation would end up in. And does it please him? Is there a deeper purpose as to why he'd even allow it to get to this state? Why did he allow the fall of man to occur? I know this is a question I used to think of as a child, that, well, Elohim wants us to be, we're going to be resurrected at some point. We'll come out of the fallen state. Well, why not just skip this whole fallen state business and not have to deal with all, the sin, the death, the depravity of the fallen state? Why would he allow the fall of man to occur? Because again, he knows the end from the beginning. So this isn't taking him by surprise. So why allow it? Why does he select a bride? I think a lot of us understand that there's going to be an overcoming position that's going to come out of this fallen state. To he who overcomes, I shall allow to sit on my throne. But why does he select a bride? In our faith, I want to say, generally speaking, we get caught up with the what of things. So in this instance, the what is, well, Elohim's going to select a bride, but we never ask why. And because we don't ask why, we lose this whole depth to our faith. So why would he select a bride? Why would he allow her to go through a fallen state? Why doesn't he just create a perfect bride? And again, let's skip all this nonsense with the fallen state. Or is there a purpose to it? What is the true price for Elohim having a bride? Because, when I ask this question, most people will think, well, Yeshua had to come in the flesh and he had to lay down his life. And what if there's a price greater than that? An eternal price that Elohim has to pay for the purpose of having a bride. Again, we get so caught up with our existence, this time domain that we're caught in, this 7,000 year plan of redemption, but we focus in on our little patch and we don't take, the bird's eye view and look at it or try to perceive it from his view. What is there a price that he has to pay eternally for him to even have a bride? And if so, why would he go to such great lengths and why would he be even willing to pay it? Here's a good question. Do we get actually any clues regarding the forever after? And I'm talking after the 1,000-year reign of Messiah, eternity, we would call it. Because look, I used to say things along the lines of, well, we don't really know too much about what's going to happen in eternity. And there is a great truth to that. But the question here is, do we get any clues? Do we catch any glimpses? Because Paul has some very interesting things to say in regards to this question. We hear we know what Paul says, we see through a glass dimly. So yes, we have a limited line of sight, but are we able to maybe catch glimpses of what Elohim really has in store for those who love him? I believe there are clues. Big questions, huh? And today's kind of teaching is hopefully opening the door to, for all of you to start a deeper journey to your faith, so that maybe you can start getting answers to these questions. Because I found that when I started to honestly ask these questions in my prayers, he started to open up things, and you start seeing things in the word and you're like, oh my goodness, when was that put in there? And it's right there. I mean, who here, we read a passage 1,000 times, we think we understand it, and then just one day something just opens up, the Spirit just brings these gems to the surface and you're like, oh my days, when was this put in there? Let's ask some more big questions, because these are the kind of questions that I want to start addressing in today's teaching. Did you choose to be born? Ask yourself this. Did you choose to be born? Yes, we're grateful that we were born. We get to experience life and, we get to enjoy our little patch in the time domain. But did you choose to be born? The answer to that would be no, you didn't. You didn't have a say in being born. Here you are. Did you choose to be born fallen? This is a big question, because again, the answer to that is no. We did not choose to be born fallen. And I remember, you know, as I was starting my journey, we understand that Elohim doesn't like sin. He asks us not to sin. We're to refrain from sin. We're to overcome sin. Yet here we are in this state. Here we are in this state. And who here has had this this thing occur in their faith of, you know, you're struggling so much with the flesh, you know, whether it be pride, whether, you know, whatever thing it is, and we wrestle against it. And who here has come to this place of like, well, I didn't ask for this, so why am I going through it? It almost seems unfair, doesn't it, when you view it this way? And again, it's because by and large, painting a broad brushstroke here, religion doesn't answer these questions. And we're kind of left to kind of, you know, bumble about and try and overcome in without really any real equipping or knowing why. And I don't know about you, but I'm the sort of person that if I don't know why, it almost seems futile to me. I want to know why. Here's a question. Does everything work towards Elohim's will and purposes? Now, if we know our scriptures, we know that the answer to that is yes. Paul very clearly says that all things work together for the good. So now factor in this question of, did you choose to be born fallen? And you've got to ask yourself, well, how does me being born fallen, how does all of creation going, you know, being subjected to this fallen state, how does this even work towards Elohim's will and purpose? Because I thought Elohim didn't like sin. But then you get these statements, you know, like in Isaiah, that says, I am Yah, I am Elohim, I create both good and evil. He created the propensity for evil. Why? Why even why do this? Especially if the outcome of evil it does not please Elohim. Why would he even allow this position, this state that technically speaking, he doesn't enjoy, yet he allows his creation to be born into it? Did the fall take Elohim by surprise? Again, we read these statements, I am Yah, I am Elohim, knowing the end from the beginning. So the fall didn't take him by, you know, it's not like, you know, Eve partook of the fruit and Elohim's like, oh, Gabriel, can you believe what Eve did? You know, again, none of this takes him by surprise. So why allow it? Why even allow it? And how does this even work towards his will and purpose? You need to ask yourself, what is his desire? Because by and large, religion will have taught you that Elohim's desire is that you overcome in the flesh. You know, generally speaking, that you do not sin. And when we keep it to this place, I believe we get stuck in this childlike spiritual state where we get caught up in the what of things and we miss the bigger picture. So I think we can agree that the fall didn't take Elohim by surprise, okay? Whose will was it for you to be born fallen? Now, this is a big question, and this is where you may get some knee jerks from your past kind of religious understanding. Because can we agree that Elohim is on the throne? Like there's not this idea of the boxing match between God and the devil. Like this is not a biblical idea, actually. Go read Job chapters 1 and 2. Who does the adversary have to submit to? He has to submit to the throne of the universe. Elohim is in full and total control, and he allows certain things for his desire and purpose. So if the fall didn't take Elohim by surprise and everything works towards Elohim's will and purpose, ask yourself, whose will was it for you to be born fallen? Again, this is a challenging question, especially if we've been raised with this good versus evil mentality, the cosmic boxing match, and that somehow the fall of man took Elohim by surprise. Because again, he knows the end from the beginning. So why would he allow it all? When I make this statement, it was Elohim's desire for you to be born fallen. This will rattle some cages. And I'm not doing it for shock value, but if we can't push past that emotional reaction, again, I believe we're being blindsided to the depth of our faith. We should be allowed to ask these questions. Truth does not mind being put on the stand. Yet the majority of religion will not allow discussions regarding these questions. You know, Paul says in his letter to the Corinthians that there are certain things he heard while he had visions of the third heaven that he dares not utter. And I do not believe that, somehow Paul is seeing visions of the third heaven and, God is whispering over to Gabriel and he's like, oh, no, Paul overheard us. Oh, no, what are we going to do? But this is where our religious journeys take us. Paul was supposed to hear those things. Whatever those things were he heard, he was supposed to. But here's an interesting line of thought on this, is that Yeshua, our king, said some very controversial things to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were not happy, to the point they eventually killed him. They had him strung up on the cross. Why? Because Yeshua was saying certain things that religious dogma would not allow the discussion of. One of these big things was that, Messiah's divinity. The Pharisees, Yeshua said some statements. Eventually, the Pharisees strung him up for blasphemy. Why? Because the accusation was, you, a man, make yourself equal to God. Religious dogma did not allow certain discussions and certain understandings to occur. And I believe this is what Paul was saying. There are certain things that Paul heard that he dared not utter because it is not right for men to say. It's not right for men. And here we are almost 2,000 years later, nothing new under the sun. Because who here has been given answers to these questions? If you have, you're very lucky. And if you have, I'm going to make a bold assumption here and assume that either you were told semi-truth or the person just didn't quite know. So again, whose will was it for you to be born fallen? Why would Elohim allow you to be born fallen? How does this actually serve his perfect will and desire? Why would Elohim allow you to be born fallen? In fact, not you, the whole creation. As Paul would say in Romans 8, the whole creation has been subjected to futility. And all creation groans for the revealing of the sons of Elohim. So why would he allow his whole creation to be subjected to a fallen state if he truly is sat on the throne? Has he got a... Because Catholicism has given this idea of, the great big white bearded man sitting on the throne, throwing lightning bolts to anyone who sins, and he's got this penchant for watching people suffer. Like, is this the witness that we're really giving to the world around us? Does it surprise you why people run away from faith? Because for the last almost 2,000 years, the religious world has broken one of the top 10 commandments, and that's you shall not bear false witness. Religion has borne false witness of the faith and of our King. And religion has not allowed the discussion on these things because it's not lawful by men and their dogma to have these discussions. And these are the discussions I want to have with you today. The reason I'm even sharing this teaching, again, this is something I've been sat on for a few years now, and I've just kind of been waiting for the right time to maybe go more public with it. This is something that I have shared with those close to me and those local to the fellowship here because of the journey we've been on over the past few years. But I know that these kind of discussions can expose certain things of religion still inside of us. Again, these knee-jerk reactions because of our past theological ideas. But I believe, you guys are celebrating Shavuot today, which is, a big topic of Shavuot is the Ruach, the Spirit. And again, I believe that once again, the Spirit is pouring out the deeper understandings to the plan of redemption. And this is why I really feel it pressed upon me. Now's the time that we need to go beyond, putting on our Shabbat Shalom face on and hi, how are you? And hiding behind our Torah studies and things like that. We need to start actually going deep in the faith. Yes, like Torah studies are important. We need to understand the foundation to our faith, but let's not stay in this childlike state because, the apostles referred to the Torah as the milk of the word, the milk. And we get caught in the milk and we don't grow up and progress beyond that. Thus, we remain in this childlike spiritual state. Finally, has Elohim taken accountability, responsibility, and the consequence of his will, his desire, and his choices? Because I believe that the king's pattern revolves around accountability, responsibility, consequence. This is something that's so lacking in the modern world. And this is a huge reason why the world is crumbling around us morally, because there's no accountability, no responsibility, and people are not paying the consequences of their choice. And when they do get some consequence, they scream like blue murder. So, but again, the fact that you didn't choose to be born fallen and that this was part of Elohim's will and desire, part of his plan, his long-term plan, has he taken accountability, responsibility, and consequence for that choice, for you to be born fallen? Because guys, let's be honest, being in this fallen state is not fun sometimes. As Paul would say, who shall deliver me from this body of death? We suffer. We do the things we don't want to do, and we don't do the things that we ought to do. And we have this wrestling going on between flesh and spirit within us. Has Elohim taken accountability, responsibility, and consequence for that? I believe he has. And we'll answer some of these questions or open the door to some of these questions as we progress through today. Proverbs 25, most of you probably know this. Verse 2, it is the esteem of Elohim to hide a matter, and the esteem of sovereigns to search out a matter. And we stop there. And we kind of go, wow, there's things concealed in scripture and there's deeper truth to our faith. Yes, that's true. That is true. But let's keep reading. Again, context is key. The heavens for height and the earth for depth, but the heart of sovereigns is unsearchable. Now, let me ask this. Who is King of Kings? Sovereign of sovereigns? Our King, Elohim. Yah is King of Kings. So Proverbs here is saying that the heart of kings is unsearchable. Well, this is speaking from a fallen state. Imagine the heart of the king of the universe. I think we can agree that his heart is unsearchable beyond anything that we can think of. He's infinite. He's limitless, right? So here, Solomon, the writer of Proverbs, is saying that the heart of the king is unsearchable. Bear this in the back of your mind. Take away the dross from silver, and a vessel comes forth for the refiner. Again, this refining process. Look, notice how the flow is. There's something that Elohim has concealed, and it's to the honor of kings to search it out. The heart of the king is unsearchable. You cannot search it. And then he goes into this thing of refining. Take away the wrong from before the sovereign, and his throne is established in righteousness. Now, are we waiting for our king to establish his throne on the earth? We're awaiting the kingdom, the millennial reign, where Yeshua will rule and reign from Zion. So will the wrong be taken away from before the sovereign? Yes, they will. His throne shall be established in righteousness. So notice the context of this thing that Elohim has concealed. It's to do with setting up a kingdom. And prior to setting up this kingdom, apparently there's going to be some silver put through the refinery so that it can become a vessel fit for purpose for the refiner. Who is the refiner? Our king is the refiner. So he's going to need some vessels. Now, remember what Paul says, in a house, there are vessels of honor and vessels of dishonor. Vessels of gold and silver, vessels of wood. So what is this matter that Elohim has concealed? And that is to the esteem of kings to search it out. Now, again, remember what's part of the millennial reign, that there will be an overcoming position that will become priests and kings, and they shall rule and reign with Messiah for 1,000 years. What is to do with maybe a kingdom? Is to do with creating vessels fit for honor so that they can serve in his kingdom. I don't know. I'm just shooting the breeze with you guys. 1 Peter 1, verse 10. Concerning this deliverance or this salvation, the prophets have sought out and searched out, prophesying concerning the favor for you, searching to know what sort of time the spirit which was in them was pointing out concerning Messiah, when it was bearing witness beforehand the sufferings of Messiah and the esteems that would follow, to whom it was revealed that they were serving not themselves, but you, in these matters which now have been announced to you through those who brought the good news to you by the set-apart Spirit sent from heaven, into which messengers or angels long to look into? You mean that there's something, Peter's saying here, that there's something concerning our salvation, concerning this plan of redemption, concerning our faith, that even the angels long to look into it. What is it that the angels long to look into? Has Elohim concealed a matter, and it's to the honor of kings to search it out? Are even the messengers of heaven longing to find out what this is? Interesting. Peter seems to think so. What are the angelic hosts missing? And do we get a second or third witness to this idea that the angels are longing to look into something? We do. Let's keep going. Jeremiah 30, verse 23. In your own time, read Jeremiah 30 and 31. We know Jeremiah 31 to 34 as, the promise of the renewed covenant. I would encourage everyone to read it from chapter 30, because 30 and 31 are one word. They're like one oratory. And it literally gives you the punishment and scattering of the house of Israel, their eventual regathering, ultimately culminating with the renewed covenant. It says, see, the storm of Yah shall go forth in a rage, a whirling storm. It bursts upon the head of the wrong. The burning displeasure of Yah shall not turn back until he has done and established the purposes of his heart. In the latter days, you shall understand it. Now, remember what we read earlier in Proverbs. It's to the honor of Elohim to conceal a matter, the honor of kings to search it out, and that the heart of the king is unsearchable. It's unsearchable. Now, notice what Jeremiah is saying here. He will establish the purposes of his heart. And in the latter days, you shall understand it. You shall, look at what Jeremiah is saying here. You will understand the purposes of the king's heart. This is powerful. It's right there in black and white. So what are the purposes of his heart? How does you being born fallen, or creation being allowed to go into this fallen state, how is this part of the purposes of his heart? And again, in the latter days, are we beginning to see an understanding of this as to really why? I believe so. Ephesians 3. To me, the very least of all the set apart ones, this favor was given to bring the good news of the unsearchable riches of Messiah among the nations. Whoa, 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 whoa. Did we not just read that the heart of the king is unsearchable? And then Jeremiah is saying, well, actually, in the latter days, you'll understand it. And Paul here is saying that there's something to this good news of the unsearchable riches of Messiah among the nations. Did Paul understand something? Had a great secret been revealed to him? Is this part maybe what the angelic hosts are longing to look into? And to make all see how this secret is administered, for which ages past has been hidden in Elohim, who created all through Yeshua Messiah. Paul is literally saying the secret was there, and now it's starting to unfold. These unsearchable riches of Messiah, the desires of our King from his heart, which is unsearchable. Well, it seems to be that there's a revealing of this. So that now listen to this, through the assembly, through you, are you the assembly of Elohim? I would hope so. Paul is saying that through the assembly, the many-sided wisdom of Elohim might be known to the principalities and authorities in the heavenlies. What did Peter say? That there's something concerning our salvation, concerning this great plan of redemption, that's something the angels long to look into. And Paul's now saying that there's these unsearchable riches of Messiah, and this is part of this salvation, this good news, that it's going to be demonstrated through the assembly, through you, and that through this demonstration, through the assembly, it will give a witness to the principalities and authorities in the heavenlies. Are they longing to look into something? Who here has spotted that, right? When was that put in there? According to the everlasting purpose which he has made in Messiah Yeshua our Master. Now again, remember Jeremiah, the burning anger of Yah shall not pass until he has established the purposes of his heart. In the latter days you shall know it. But Proverbs was saying the heart of the king is unsearchable. But here Paul is saying something is being demonstrated. These unsearchable riches are being demonstrated through the assembly and demonstrating it to the heavenlies. So that was all introduction, just to kind of set the scene as to let's start answering some of these questions, because I believe by going through the questions, we'll start answering, what is the will and purpose of our King? So why even create? Why even create? Because who here has heard this idea? Well, Elohim is perfect, he's infinite, and that means he has no need or no want. He's perfectly self-satisfied, if that makes sense. So why even create? Why even create? And again, does Scripture give us clues to how our Elohim, to how our King feels? Let's go right back to the beginning, because the end is declared from the beginning. Genesis 2:18, Yah Elohim said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I am going to make a helper for him as his counterpart." And those of us who are in a marriage covenant will really understand this. Hopefully, our lives now that we're married are so much fuller and richer because we have a counterpart. We have a helpmeet that Elohim has given us. And from the ground, Yah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living being, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heavens and to every beast of the field. But for the man, there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. Now, again, remember Hebraically, when something is repeated, it's trying to get your attention. Your ears are meant to perk up. And we're being told here, essentially, it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good. In Genesis 1:26, we read this: Elohim said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground. So we know that we're created in the image of Elohim. Now, no one really knows what to do with this verse. I mean, is it speaking physically, metaphorically, emotionally, spiritually? We don't really know what to do with this. And I don't think anyone really fully understands this. But again, I do believe that his spirit is pouring out revelation and truth in these last days. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. He's repeating this point now 4 times within 2 verses, which, again, we need to listen. What is Elohim trying to say? What is he trying to say? Like, what's so important about us being created in his image? Remember what Paul says in, I think it's Romans 1, where he says that through the creation, his invisible qualities have been clearly manifested, that all should be without excuse. So is there something in this passage that's trying to demonstrate something about our King's qualities and characteristics? I would say yes. Why repeat it 4 times within 2 verses? Isaiah 44 verse 6, thus said Yah, sovereign of Yisrael, and his redeemer, Yah of hosts, I am the first and the last. Besides me, there is no Elohim. There is no Elohim besides him. And who is like me? Let him call and declare it and lay it before me, since I appointed the everlasting people. And the events that are coming and those that do come, let them declare these to them. Do not fear, nor be afraid. Have I not since made you hear and declared it? You are my witnesses. Is there an Eloah, a God besides me? There is no other rock. I know not one. I know not one. I hope people are starting to maybe connect the dots. Is he trying to say what I think he's saying? Again, Isaiah 45:7, I am Yah, there is none else. Declare and bring near, let them even take counsel together. Who has announced this from of old? Who has declared it from that time? Is it not I, Yah? And there is no mighty one besides me, a righteous El and a savior, there is none besides me. So there's none like Elohim. He is alone. There is none like him. Imagine the loneliness that comes with that. Like, we read this in, Elohim being all powerful and majestic, which he is, and that there's none like him. But actually think of the loneliness of that position. There is none like him. Adults, how would you feel if you got to spend the rest of your life with children? No other adults, just children. I mean, it would be nice up to a point, but after a while, you would need something. There's a certain place you can't, there's a depth of conversation and intimacy that you can't go to with a child, because they don't have the capacity to have certain conversations, or they don't actually have the capacity to understand certain emotions and certain things. So would you start to feel lonely? I think you would. In fact, it would probably start driving you crazy after a while. Elohim's all alone. There is none like him. Turn to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, for I am El, there is none else. Again, he says this over and over and over again. Perk up your ears. What's he trying to say? What's he really trying to say? It is not good for, let's bring this all together. It is not good for man to be alone, okay? Man is created in the image of Elohim, which means that there's something about the image of man that's pointing to the character of our Elohim. I would argue, therefore, it's not good for Elohim to be alone. Are we not created in his image? Yes. It's not good for man to be alone. So he has a counterpart. But Elohim's alone. There is none like him. Look, where do you think your emotions come from? Where do you think your emotion? Because we like to put Elohim in this box of he doesn't, you know, he's Elohim. He's all self-sufficient. He's completely satisfied in himself. Like, where did we get this idea? Because I actually can't find it in scripture. Please show me the chapter, the verse, book, chapter where it says that. It doesn't say that. In fact, what I do see, it's not good for man to be alone. Elohim, man is created in the image of Elohim, and Yah says that he's alone. There is none like him. Again, let's bring it to the shadow picture. Adults, how would you feel living the rest of your life with 5-year-olds and never having someone that you can have that bond with at the adult level? It would drive you crazy after a while. Does Elohim feel joy? Does Elohim feel sadness? Does he feel grief? Does he feel anger? Yes, is the answer to all of these. Where do your emotions come from? They come from him. Why? Because you are created in his image. So where does this idea of being lonely come from? Could it be that our Elohim is experiencing loneliness at a level that we can't even comprehend? There is none like him. Elohim is alone to a level that we cannot comprehend. Because like, at least we have the understanding that even if we're lonely in our walk, there's other people out there. But for Elohim, there is none like him. I believe that Elohim's desire is to have someone like him. Again, why does Elohim want a bride? Does this question now make more sense? Is Elohim seeking something to be like him? Does not Yeshua say statements like, therefore be perfect like your Father in the heavens? Is Elohim desiring someone to be like him? Eve was Adam's helper. That was her job. She was his helpmeet. Do we have a ruling governance in the age to come that's going to help administer his will, his desire, his kingdom? Oh, yes, we're going to have priests and kings to those who overcome. Come, let me show you the bride of the Lamb. You get these statements in Revelation. So what's the job of the bride of Elohim? Is it to just sit on fluffy clouds and play a harp for eternity? Or is there work to be done? Is Elohim desiring a helpmeet? Is Elohim seeking a helper? Is he seeking a helper? Is he seeking someone that he can actually level with, someone that he can actually connect with? Because currently he's alone. Isaiah 9, verse 6, for a child is born unto us, a son is given unto us, and the rule is on his shoulder. The word there for rule is more like a rulership, a government. His name is called Wonder, Counselor, Strong El, Father of Continuity or Father of Eternity, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his rule or his government and peace, there is no end. Upon the throne of David and over his reign, to establish it and sustain it with right ruling and with righteousness from now on, even forever. The ardor or the zeal of Yah of hosts does this. Now go do a word study on this word zeal or ardor. You will find that it's actually a marriage term, how a husband has zeal over his wife. He's zealous, he's jealous over his wife. So notice this bridal illusion right here. And this is linked to a government. A government, again, is Elohim seeking a helpmeet? Revelation 4:4, and around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders dressed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. What? Have you ever wondered, why does the King of the universe even want eldership around him? Why? Surely he's Elohim. He knows everything, right? His will is perfect. And I'm not trying to downplay those statements. I'm really not. But we don't ask, well, why would Elohim even want eldership? Which, by the way, right here in the eldership, you're seeing accountability and responsibility right there in the form of discipleship and ultimately government. We never ask why. We stay focused on the what. Oh, yeah, there's 24 elders. Why? Why? Revelation 20, verse 4, and I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the lives of those who had been beheaded because of the witness they bore to Yeshua and because of the word of Elohim, and who did not worship the beast nor his image, and did not receive his mark upon their foreheads or upon their hands. So you see this overcoming position. And it says that they lived and reigned with Messiah for 1,000 years. There's millennial reign governance that we see throughout Scripture. Why does Elohim even need that? Why would he want it? Blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death possesses no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Apparently, the king wants a helping hand. I'm not saying that he can't do it. Obviously, he can do it. But parents, have you ever found that, sometimes you could do something far, like a task or something, you could do it far quicker if you did it by yourself. But when you involve your children with it, does it bring you like a certain joy that you couldn't have if you hadn't involved them? And yes, that whatever the task is, it may take more time and a bit more effort, but you get this beautiful joy that you can't explain. Are we seeing, again, what that is a shadow picture pointing to something? As again, Paul says, in the creation, his invisible qualities are clearly demonstrated. You need to start looking at your interactions with wives and children and husbands and ask yourself, well, what does this point to? And how does this relate to us being created in the image of Elohim? Why do we even have these desires? Revelation 3:21, to him who overcomes, I shall give to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. Do you actually believe that? Do you actually believe this is the throne of the universe? This is a huge statement. And again, we read so glibly over it, oh, yeah. And we don't actually sit there and chew on that and follow the logic through, so to speak. Elohim has decided that he wants a ruling governance to shepherd his creation in the final age. And I actually believe that this is what the discipleship model is based around. Accountability, responsibility, consequence. But what is the Great Commission? Go and make disciples of nations. The Great Commission is not knock on every door. It's make disciples. Why? Again, anyway, the overcoming position will be used in this governance. That's very clear. This is a promise given to the overcomer. True spiritual authority. I've put this statement here because when you go to let's say you've got a struggle in the flesh. Who are you going to go to for counsel on that? Are you going to go to someone who has a load of head knowledge, or would you rather go to someone that's been through the same thing as you and has overcome it? Which one do you think will speak with a greater authority? The one that's overcome. Oh, do you start to see why maybe we even need to overcome? that this overcoming position will have a wisdom that can only be gained through the crushing of our lives, through our trials and our tribulation, you know, this oil that comes from the crushing. This governance will have the full power and authority of Elohim at their disposal. It's the power over life and death. They will sit on his throne. Again, Revelation 3:21. And if any of you have watched the, Curtis and I did a teaching series recently called The Great Judgment. We always think that the bride will rule and sit on his throne in regards to the millennial reign. I actually believe that goes right through to the great white throne judgment. If that's a statement where you have a huge knee jerk, it's okay. Go watch the series. You'll be surprised. Again, how much has religion and the doctrines and dogmas of men robbed us from knowing our Elohim? We don't even realize how deep our faith is. We get caught up in these word studies, and yes, there's a lot of depth and neat insights into these things, but as Yeshua would say, you search the scriptures thinking you'll find life in them, and they're the ones that speak of me. And we stay again in this childlike spiritual state because of what our religious, you know, whatever religious journeys we've had and what we've inherited from our fathers. And it's keeping us in this place of words and word studies, and we miss the weightier picture. Elohim needs to be able to trust his bride with this level of power. I think that's a fair statement to make. You're going to, because look, at no point is Elohim going to take away free will, ever. Even in eternity, he will not take away free will, because if not, love is not real. It would be Nicolaitanism otherwise. Elohim's not going to have that. And I've put here the step-parent analogy. Some of you right now may be step-parents, or, you know, be on a second marriage or something, and you may have children from a previous marriage. And when you marry your new spouse, you want them to be, you need to be able to trust them with your children, because essentially those children become theirs too, if you understand true biblical headship. So again, what is this pointing to? Because look, you're not going to give the keys to the car to your 10-year-old. Why? It's not because you don't love them. You absolutely, you love your 10-year-old, but you can't trust them with the keys of the car, because they're going to do some damage. How much more so with the power of the throne of the universe? This is, again, think of the parable of the talents. Well done, good and faithful and trustworthy servant. You were faithful and trustworthy with the little, which is what we're experiencing now, the little. Now I can set you over much. Can we be trusted? How do you find out whether someone is trustworthy or not? Acts chapter 20, verse 28. Therefore take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the set-apart Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the assembly of Elohim, which he has purchased with his own blood. This ruling governance will have authority over that which he died for. He came in the flesh and died, paid the price with his own blood, and he's going to set an overcoming position over them. How much does he have to trust them? To the point, because he loved his creation so much that he died for it. Again, think of the step-parent analogy. For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves shall come in among you, not sparing the flock. This is a believing from within the believers. This is not like, you know, non-believers coming in and causing havoc. Paul is saying here that they're going to come from within you. Also from among yourselves, men shall arise, speaking distorted teachings to draw away the taught ones after themselves. Do you think that Elohim's going to allow this in his kingdom, especially when he paid by laying down his life. Absolutely not. Elohim paid the highest price for his creation. Again, remember what I said. Has Elohim taken accountability, responsibility, and consequence? This is part of the consequence to his choice. He had to come and die. But that's not that's not the completeness of the price he had to pay. But it's a big part of it. Elohim will not have savage wolves in his government. Again, it needs to be a trusted position. How do you find someone that is trustworthy? Like, look, how do you find someone in the shadow picture? Someone, you have to find someone, you have to see how they act, you have to give it time, you have to watch them up. The best way to see if someone's trustworthy, put them through a difficult situation. Do you think that maybe Elohim allows us to go through trials and tribulations to see how we may react? Let's look at this idea of being like him. Because remember, Elohim is alone. There is none like him. I am Yah, there is none else. Matthew 5:43, this is Yeshua speaking. You heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those cursing you, do good to those hating you, and pray for those insulting you and persecuting you, so that you become sons of your Father in the heavens, because he makes his sun rise on the wicked and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. Yeshua is essentially saying, be like your Father in the heavens. Learn his character. How does our King operate? Because one day he's going to entrust a bride, an overcoming position, to rule over his creation with him. Do you think that you want someone like you, someone that shares the same values as you, someone that will judge righteously like you? For if you love those loving you, what reward have you? Are the tax collectors not doing the same too? And if you greet your brothers only, what do you do more than others? Are the tax collectors not doing so too? Therefore, be perfect as your Father in the heavens is perfect. If you do some study on this Greek word, it's got this idea of being mature, being fully grown, being fully developed to the point that you can't grow anymore. It's a very interesting word in the Greek. And again, like we lose this in the English. Be perfect. It means to be complete, to be whole, to be fully developed. Now think spiritually. Is Elohim going to allow children, spiritual children, to sit on the throne of heaven? I highly doubt it. If we're called to be like him, we need to know what he is like. Surely not. Our King is saying, be like your Father in the heavens. Well, how do I be like someone? You have to know what they're like. Okay? So what is Elohim like? Exodus 34, verse 5. And Yah came down in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name Yah. So this is Elohim showing himself to Moshe on Mount Sinai. And Yah passed before him and proclaimed, Yah, Yah, an El, compassionate and showing favor, patient, great in loving commitment and truth. Right? These are like the first four attributes that he says, this is what I'm like. This is what I'm like. Watching over loving commitment for thousands, forgiving crookedness and transgression of sin, but by no means leaving unpunished, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. Right here, you have your King's character. Compassionate, showing favor, patient, great in loving commitment or truth. Like loving commitment, the word there is chesed. It may be translated as merciful. It's a hard word to translate into English. This is why I like this loving commitment kind of idea. Forgiving. crookedness and transgression and sin. So here's our King's character, and we're called to be like him. Let's ask some questions. How does one truly know what compassion is? And I'm not talking intellectually. How does one know what compassion is? Who here has found that you can know something on the intellectual level and then you live it and then you know it, you understand it? So how does one truly know what compassion is? I would argue that the only way you know compassion is by being shown compassion. Because unless you are shown compassion, you will not fully understand it. You may have book knowledge on it, so to speak, but you will not know it intimately. To know compassion, you have to be shown it. Now let's ask this. Is mercy and compassion given to those who deserve it or those who don't deserve it? By the very definition, it's shown to someone who doesn't deserve it. So that means you need to have done something wrong to be shown mercy and compassion. Maybe you need to be born into a certain state to be shown mercy and compassion so that you know what it's truly like, so that you can then show it unto others. How does one truly know what forgiveness is? Again, I'm talking knowing intimately. The only way you know what forgiveness is to be shown it. Who here has found that we can be a little bit judgmental at times, and then we walk a mile in someone's shoes, and then all of a sudden we start being a bit more compassionate and merciful on those people, right? We've been there, right? Why? Because we realize what it's like. And quite often, when we're shown mercy and compassion in another area, in an area of our lives, if someone else is struggling with that same struggle, and we've been shown mercy and compassion in it, should we not be merciful and compassionate to them? By the way, this is the parable of the unforgiving servant right there. The unforgiving servant was shown a great mercy and compassion, though he did not deserve it, and yet he didn't show it unto someone else who had something far less. The only way you will truly know what forgiveness is by being shown forgiveness. Well, how does one be shown forgiveness without a fall? Is there a purpose to the fall? Because, by the way, without the fall of man, you cannot know mercy and compassion. You cannot know forgiveness. You may understand it. But think of this. Adam, before he fell, he was told, when you eat of the fruit, not if you eat, when you eat of the fruit, whole other discussion, when you eat of the fruit, you shall surely die. That's a mental, that's a concept to him. Death is a concept. He doesn't know what death is. He may understand it intellectually. Okay, I'm alive, I cease to live, but it would have been a concept. He knew what a glorified state was, but he didn't know what death was. We're actually on the opposite end of this because we're intimately connected with death. All of us will have loved ones die in our lifetime. We've almost become desensitized to it because of how much we experience it. But the glorified state, well, that's just a mental concept to us. We don't know it. Using that logic, how do you know what compassion is? How do you know what mercy is? How do you really know what forgiveness is? Again, remember, these are the top attributes of our King. He's merciful, compassionate, showing loving commitment, showing forgiveness, but by no means leaving unpunished. And he wants someone to be like him. Do you see where I'm going with this? Let me ask this. Did Adam truly know what love is? Let me phrase it this way. Is mercy and compassion and forgiveness part of love? I sure hope it is. If you do not have mercy, compassion, and forgiveness within your definition of love, I don't need your love. Thank you very much. Husbands, wives, do you have to show compassion to your spouse every now and then? Do you have to maybe show a little long-suffering every now and then? To your children, to your spouse, to your friends? Yes. But did Adam truly know what love is in its fullest dimensions and capacity? Yes, he would have experienced the intimacy with Elohim. Again, something we can't really comprehend because we're in a fallen state. But how would have Adam truly known what mercy and compassion is before the fall? Do you now maybe see a purpose to the fall? Elohim wants someone like him that doesn't just understand it on an intellectual level, but it's been written on their heart. Why? Because there's going to be a ruling governance coming. I believe this is part of the why of the fall. And again, guys, we're scratching the surface here, believe me. What we're covering today is just opening the door for deeper discussion, really. I do not believe Adam fully understood love. In the same way, what did Peter say? There's something to our salvation, our deliverance, that even the angels long to look into. What is it? Could it be linked with love? Adam would have only known truly what mercy and compassion is until he needed it. Without a transgression, without the fall, you will never know what compassion, mercy, and forgiveness is. And it's not so that we can understand him. That's part of it. It's so that we can then show it unto others. Without the fall, none of this is possible. Ephesians 4:32, be kind towards one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as Elohim also forgave you in Messiah. Paul is literally saying, he's saying that we're to forgive one another as Elohim forgave us. Well, how are we going to forgive one another if we've got nothing for Elohim to forgive us of? We've got no template. We've got nothing to build our understanding of forgiveness from. Why would Elohim allow it? I hope this is starting to make more sense. Genesis 2, again, let's go back to the beginning, verse 21. Yah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. And this one is called woman because she was taken out of man. So woman is like man. She's of man. They are one. They are of the same kind, right? For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. They shall become echad. Adam's helper was of the same nature as him. Now, let me ask you this. Are you of the same nature as Elohim? Apparently not, right? Here we are, here on earth, and he's up in the heavens. We're not of the same nature at the minute. Does this maybe explain why this corruptible body has to be shed so that we can put on an incorrupt? Anyway, let's look at John 4:24. Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth. So Elohim is spirit, but we're flesh. And for two to cleave and become one, they need to be of the same nature, okay? This causes a slight problem right now. By the way, go do some studies on redemption as well, because redemption, the rules in the Torah in regards to redemption, you have to be of the same nature of the thing as you're redeeming. Well, how does Elohim, who is spirit, redeem man who's flesh, unless he puts on flesh? Anyway, I digress. There's a whole other discussion there. Listen to this, John 3:5. Yeshua answered, truly, truly, I say to you. This is the discussion with Nicodemus. Unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he is unable to enter into the reign of Elohim. You mean being reborn into the same nature as the King, Spirit? That which has been born of the flesh is flesh. And that which has been born of the Spirit is spirit. Oh, wait, Elohim is spirit. Do you maybe understand now why as well, like as part of the renewed covenant, one of the promises is that we will be given the fullness of the Spirit and his covenant shall be written on our hearts. We will be of like nature, which means the two can now become one. Do not marvel that I say to you, you have to be born from above. John 1:12, but as many as received him, to him he gave the authority to become children of Elohim, to those believing in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the desire of flesh, nor of the desire of man, but of Elohim. Like, this is the beauty and depth, or one of the beauties and depths of our faith, that we can be born of Elohim, so that we can become one. Ezekiel 36:26, I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take out the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh and put my spirit within you. And I shall cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings and shall do them. Like, we read... Again, I'm going to paint a broad brushstroke here, but generally from the Christian side of the journey, we read this and we think, yeah, great, yeah, spirit will be in us, but we never think of it as being like him, being of the same nature. Not only will his bride govern from an overcoming position, she will be like him. She will actually be born of the Spirit. Does that phrase now, born of the Spirit, mean so much more? Rather than this ethereal, airy-fairy, like, oh, no, there's something really powerful here. She will be able to truly judge righteously. She'll have a perfect balance of mercy, compassion, favor, and judgment. Again, what's the character of our King? Merciful, compassionate, showing favor, showing loving commitment, forgiving, yet by no means leaving unpunished. Righteous judgment. What will the bride on the throne do? She will judge in righteousness. Link this to the promise of Isaiah, that a rod shall come forth from Jesse, and he shall he shall have the spirit of Elohim, and he shall judge not by the sight of his eyes, but by the spirit of Elohim. This is the spirit that hopefully we're being born of. By the way, I believe that this is why there's been such a huge attack on the understanding of the spirit of Elohim. Like, I'm going to say it, a bastardization of the understanding of it, because look at this, the silliness that goes on out there, that all those religious games in regards to the spirit is robbing you of this understanding, which the result is you're being robbed of the intimacy with your King, which ultimately can result in a robbing you of possible bridal selection. This is how serious it is. And this is why I believe now's the time is for me to start speaking a bit more openly about these matters. I think we can agree that Elohim wants his bride to love him. Husbands, do you want your brides to love you? Wives, do you want your husbands to love you? Do you want them to do it because they choose to do so or because they're forced to do so? Which one means something? Love from choice. Elohim wants his bride to choose to love him. Let me ask you this. Had the fall not occurred, would there even be a choice to choose Elohim? Because to be able to choose Elohim, you need to be able to choose him over something. Again, why would Elohim even allow evil into his... Remember, he created good and evil, and we know that he is good. There is none good but him. Why even allow the presence of evil unless it was to involve choice? What makes my marriage covenant so special is that in this planet, there are millions of other candidates for my wife that she could have chosen. Millions. She could have chosen this guy, that guy, this guy, but she chose me. Not only did she choose me, she chooses to submit to me. This is what makes love special. Elohim wants his bride to choose to love him. For her to know what love is, she must experience love in all its facets, which include mercy, compassion, forgiveness. So again, this is, you're getting a deeper understanding, hopefully, of why would Elohim allow the fall, so that we can experience mercy, compassion, forgiveness, but also so that we have the opportunity to choose. Choose this day whom you shall serve. Elohim also needs to know that the love his bride has for him is real. Let me even phrase it this way. Elohim knows who are his, but do we? One of the statements I like to make every now and then is that, again, Elohim knows the end from the beginning. We don't. You need to find out whether you love Elohim or not. Welcome to the test called life. But how do you legitimize love? How do you test love and know that it's real? You put it through something, right? 1 John 4, we love him because he first loved us. If someone says, I love Elohim and hates his brother, he is a liar. For the one not loving his brother whom he has seen, how is he able to love Elohim whom he has not seen? The way we interact with one another is showing Elohim whether we will love him or not. So when your brother or your sister in the faith starts to aggravate you a little bit, ask yourself, what is Elohim seeing? Remember what Yeshua said, because our king, he sends rain both on the righteous and the unrighteous. Let's not be like the tax collectors who only greet one another. What does Elohim see when we come together and we meet? Is he seeing something along the lines of, wow, I think they can love me? Because like Yeshua says, by this the world will know we are his disciples, by how we love one another. And remember that some of the biggest aspects of love is mercy, compassion, and forgiveness. And we have this command from him that the one loving Elohim should love his brother too. We're actually to love one another from a fallen state, are we not? That can be difficult at times, right? And I'm not meaning because of the other person's fallen state. I'm speaking of your fallen state, my fallen state. There's a difficulty from both angles, yet we're to love one another from a fallen state. If we can figure out agape from a fallen state, how great is that love in a glorified state? Think about it. If you can discover agape, love, from a fallen state, how much greater will it be in a glorified state? By the way, the only way you can find agape from a fallen state is by his ruach and by following his pattern. You know, I'm going to say something that may sound a bit bold, but it took me quite a few years to figure out agape coming into this journey. I thought I had agape. Turns out I had phileo, the one, you know, there's different levels of love. Brotherly affection is the one below. So you have phileo, which is brotherly affection, then you have agape. And a lot of us think that what we have is agape. Actually, it's brotherly affection. And that means that what we think is brotherly affection is mere formalities, actually. This is the state we're in generally. Took me years to figure out what agape was. It came through walking with my brothers in accountability and discipleship. That's how I figured out agape. Again, this is why John says we have to love one another. Because if we can't love one another, how can we love Elohim? Because it's by loving one another that we figure out what agape is. Look, this is why Yeshua says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, I phileo you. Yeshua saying, do you agape me? Peter says, I phileo, which is the one below. And he says, feed my sheep. Peter, do you agape me? I phileo you. Well, feed my sheep. Yeshua is literally, I believe what Yeshua is saying is like, okay, Peter, I know you haven't quite figured out agape. The way you're going to figure it out, feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. By the way, those of you who have been shepherds know that herding sheep is difficult. They stink, they smell. They leave certain substances on you, shall we say. Is this what we're like spiritually? If we can love Elohim from a fallen state, can he trust the love of his bride from a glorified state? Absolutely. Again, why? You know, who married couples, those of you who have gone through great trials in your marriage, has that strengthened your marriage? Yes. When my wife and I have gone through difficult times, because of what was going on around us, it actually it brings you closer together. You know, this whole thing of, you know, it's you and me versus the world. But the trials and tribulations actually knitted us closer together. Would you say that the fallen state is a trial and a tribulation? Yes, it's a difficult battle. Does Elohim allow it to strengthen the love of his bride? Again, I believe this is more of the why of the fall. Let me say it in a little statement. Without the fall, you cannot know love. It will always be a concept. To Adam in the garden, matters of forgiveness and mercy would have been a concept. He would have not known them. Yet our King wants a bride to be like him, that does know these things. Well, how does she know them? She's going to have to experience it. And this is something that only mankind can experience. I believe this is what the angelic host long to look into. Look, we go read Genesis 6. What happens to the angels that come down, right? Into judgment you go. See you later. What does Yeshua say? That in the kingdom, we shall neither marry nor be given in marriage. We shall be like the angels. This means that the angelic hosts have never experienced the marriage covenant in the flesh. Now, husbands, wives, has your marriage to your husband or your wife actually increased your understanding of love between Elohim and his creation? I know it sure has for me. Now, yeah, you can understand that intellectually. Look, it's when like an unmarried person comes to you and says, tell me what marriage is like. You can only give so much, right? It's only a concept. It's not until you're actually married and you're living it that you can truly know what it is. Angels are not given in marriage. So they're actually, there's a line of sight that they're missing. Interesting, huh? I hope this maybe starts to answer what the angelic hosts are longing to look into. The angelic hosts would serve Elohim from fear and servitude, from a glorified state. What I mean is that, like, there's, again, what happened to the angels of Genesis 6? Into judgment you go. Like the angelic hosts are servants, they're bond servants, they're ministering spirits, they're servants in the house, okay? They're servants. So they're coming at it from a place of servitude. Yes, the angelic hosts still have choice. They have choice. But we need to get to a place where we serve Elohim from love and from submission from a fallen state. Look, think about this. The angelic hosts are in a glorified state. They don't have the fallen state to contend with, which means that you can argue that servitude comes a bit more naturally. We have to, look, the flesh wrestles against the spirit, okay? And we know that the Torah, the commands, are spiritual, as Paul would say in Romans 7:14. And we know that our flesh will want to do things that Elohim says are not good, okay? We have to overcome that. The angelic hosts do not have this opportunity to overcome like we do. Why? Because they're not fallen. Now, again, think of judgment. Elohim's going to have a bride on the throne during the millennial reign, judging, okay? She will be ruling in righteousness. Do you want someone on the throne that understands things conceptually, or do you want someone on the throne that's lived it? Do you see what are the angels are longing to look into? You know, next time you start complaining about your fallen state, count it all joy when we go through manifold trials. It's teaching you something. It's giving you the opportunity to overcome. If we can do this from a fallen state, how much greater from a glorified state? Remember what I said, how do you test love? You put it through something. Married couples that have been through trials and tribulation, your love to one another was tested. It was refined. It went through the fire. It's tested. It's assured. You know it's unwavering. And if you can get to that place from a fallen state, from an overcoming position, how much greater from a glorified state? Again, this is something the angelic hosts do not get to do. 1 John 4. By this, love has been perfected in us, in order that we might have boldness in the day of judgment. Because as he is, so are we in this world. Again, you like him. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear holds punishment, and he who fears has not been made perfect in love. Are the angelic hosts able to grapple with the idea of love like we are? I would say no. This is why they're in a servitude position. They're in a servitude. But look at this. I like to say love has been perfected in order that we may have boldness in the day of judgment. My wife can come boldly before me, hopefully, if something's up. Why? Because love has been perfected. And she knows that part of the love we have for one another involves mercy, compassion, forgiveness, understanding, despite my fallen state. Yes, I struggle sometimes. I'm nowhere near perfect. But do you see what I'm trying to get at, people? The bride will be an overcomer. That's an absolute statement in the book of Revelation. The bride will be an overcomer. To be an overcomer, you need to overcome something, guys. She will be like Elohim, mercy, compassion, and so on. Her love will be tried, tested, and assured. Elohim will not doubt it. Why? Because she went through the fallen state and she overcame. By the power of his Ruach, she overcame from the fallen state. 1 Corinthians 6:2, do you not know that the set apart ones shall judge the world? Go look at the Greek word here for world. It's not earth, it's cosmos, the universe. The universe. Do you not know that the set apart ones shall judge the creation? Think of it that way. And if the world is judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? Do you not know that we shall judge messengers, angels? How much more matters of this life? Like, where does Paul get this understanding from? I believe it's because Paul understood that the bride of Messiah will be like him. She'll have overcome. She will understand all the facets of love because she was shown it and she showed it unto others, which means that Elohim can now trust that on the throne. Remember that she will be judging over his creation, which he died for. Because of this, I, Shaul, am the prisoner of Yeshua Messiah on behalf of you nations. If indeed you have heard of the administration of the favor of Elohim that was given to me for you, that by revelation was made known to me the secret, as I wrote before briefly. In reading this, then, you are able to understand my insight into the secret of Messiah. Again, remember the unsearchable riches of Messiah that have been demonstrated through the assembly, which prior were unsearchable because the heart of our King is unsearchable, which was not made known to the sons of men in the other generations, as it has now been revealed by the Spirit to his set-apart emissaries and prophets. This is the secret. The nations to be co-heirs, united in the same body, one. This is marriage language. The two shall become one flesh, and partakers together in the promise in Messiah through the good news, of which I became a servant according to the gift of the favor of Elohim given to me, according to the working of his power. To me, the very least of all the set-apart ones. Now, we read this earlier, but I'm now giving you greater context. This favor was given to bring the good news of the unsearchable riches of Messiah among the nations, and to make all see how this secret is administered. Paul has just told you that the secret is for the nations to become one, for the two to become one flesh. Well, how does that happen unless the two are not of the same kind? You have to be born of the Spirit, which for the ages past has been hidden in Elohim, who created all through Yeshua Messiah, so that now through the assembly, through you, hopefully, the many-sided wisdom of Elohim might be known to the principalities and the authorities in the heavenlies, this thing that they're longing to look into. Notice that Paul is linking this right to the two becoming one. This is marriage language, and this is what the angelic hosts are longing to look into, because there's something they cannot experience like we can. According to the everlasting purpose, which is he has made Messiah Yeshua our Master. Again, remember Jeremiah 30 that says that in the latter days we shall know the purpose and will of his heart, in whom we have boldness and access with reliance through belief in him. Why? How do you have boldness and access to the throne? Because love has been perfected. Ephesians 5, because we are members of his body, of his flesh and of his bones. Well, what did Adam say about Eve? This is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones, and for this reason they shall cleave and become one. Paul is using marriage language. For this cause, he goes right back to the beginning. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This secret is great, but I speak concerning Messiah and the assembly. Like, because prior to this, he's saying, wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Messiah. And he's saying, I'm not even speaking about that, though. I'm speaking about Messiah and the assembly. It's through the assembly that the witness is given to the angelic host of the many-sided wisdom which was hidden in a secret. These matters that are unsearchable. Again, It is to the honor of Elohim to conceal a matter, and it is to the honor of kings to search it out. Those that have eyes to see and ears to hear will be able to, those that hunger and thirst for his righteousness, you know, ask and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. But religious dogma is preventing you from asking the questions. It's preventing you from knocking on the door. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 6. This is one of my absolute favorite passages, and it's become one of my favorite passages this last year. Yet we speak wisdom among those who are perfect. Now, again, the word here, perfect, is in the Greek, this idea of being fully matured, right? Now, look, Elohim's not going to marry a child bride. He's going to marry a mature bride that's fully developed and mature spiritually. So Paul is speaking a wisdom among those who are perfect, mature, fully grown, and not the wisdom of this age, nor of the rulers of this age that are being brought to naught. Notice, so the wisdom of what age is the question you need to ask. What's the wisdom that we're learning now? Is it for an age to come? And why is Paul linking it to rulership? But we speak the wisdom of Elohim, which was hidden in a secret, and which Elohim ordained before the ages for our esteem, in which no one of the rulers of this age knew, for if they had known, they would have not impaled the master of esteem. But as it has been written, so before I jump onto this, I hope people can really see this, that the wisdom Paul is speaking of is for those who are mature, those that have been perfected. How is love, right? Love needs to be perfected. And it's not the wisdom of this age, it's of the one to come. And this is linked to rulership. Let me suggest this to you, that what we're meant to be learning now, the wisdom for the age to come, because he's going to have a bride sat on the throne with him, and she will rule by his wisdom. Remember the parable of the talents. You were trustworthy with the little, let me set you over much. The much is the millennial reign, guys. But as it has been written, eye has not seen and ear has not heard, nor have entered into the heart of man what Elohim has prepared for those who love him. And we read this and say, we can know nothing about eternity or the age to come. That's not what Paul says. But Elohim has revealed them to us through his Spirit. For the Spirit searches all matters, even the depths of Elohim. Like, I really want people to process what Paul is saying here. There are things that I cannot see, ear has not heard. And it doesn't even enter into the heart of man to know what's come, what's being prepared. Paul's saying, but the Spirit of Elohim is revealing them to us. Why do you think there is such an attack on the understanding of his Spirit by the enemy? Because that same Spirit is what's revealing the manifold wisdom of Elohim to us. And notice this, the Spirit searches all matters, even the depths of Elohim. Doesn't Proverbs say that the heart of the king is unsearchable? Ooh, the depths of his heart. What did Jeremiah say? In the latter days, you shall understand the desires of his heart. Paul is telling you that the Spirit searches even the depth. The Spirit searches the unsearchable. And this is why the enemy has gone out of his way to really attack the understanding of the Ruach. For who among men knows the thoughts of man except the spirit of man that is in him? So also the thoughts of Elohim no one has known except the Spirit of Elohim. Paul is literally saying, if you have the Ruach, you can begin to understand the thoughts and desires of your king. Look, my bride and I are now at this point where we can look at each other and we know what the other's thinking or feeling. Why? Because of this intimacy. What is that a type and shadow of? Again, this is why the attack on the understanding of the spirit is real. Because if you have a faulty understanding of the spirit, you're going to start to build Elohim according to your own image or to a faulty image. And we have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit that is from Elohim, in order to know what Elohim has favorably given us, which we also speak not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the set apart spirit teaches, comparing spiritual matters with spiritual matters. But the natural man does not receive the matters of the spirit of Elohim, for they are foolishness to him, and he is unable to know them because they are spiritually discerned. This discussion that we're having can only come about because of the Ruach opening the word up. But he who is spiritual discerns indeed all matters, but he himself is discerned by no one. For who has known the mind of Yah? Who shall instruct him? But we have the mind of Messiah. This is another one of these absolutely powerful statements. Who has known the mind of Yah? Who shall instruct him? It's, you know, this question. Paul's saying, but we have the mind of Messiah, which implies that the mind of Messiah knows the mind of Yah, and it can instruct him. Guys, what's around the throne of heaven? Revelation says there's 24 thrones around the throne of heaven. Elders. Why does the king want eldership? Look, people will say, oh, Michael, you're being blasphemous. You're being blasphemous. There's none like Elohim. Remember what Paul says. There are certain things that he dares not utter. But I believe now's the time that we need to start actually talking about what our faith is really talking about, because we haven't got time to be playing religion. If we can know the mind and heart of Elohim from a fallen state, how much more from a glorified state? Think about this. If he can trust us with his mind and heart from a fallen state, how much more from a glorified state? It's at this point, you know, Paul says we see through a glass dimly, right? In other places, we read that we're given a pledge or a deposit of the Spirit, which actually implies we've not been given the fullness of it. We've been given a down payment. Why would Elohim give us a down? I believe what Elohim is saying, okay, let me give you a deposit of the Spirit. Let me see what you're going to do with it. Because if I can trust you with the little, I can trust you with the much. Elohim's seeing if he can trust us. We also need to learn that we can trust him. Whole of the discussion. If he can trust us to love each other from a fallen state, how much more from a glorified state? So, why is Elohim legitimizing love from his bride at such? Look, when I say why is he doing it at such a level, look at how far he has gone to test this. I mean, this is truly a test of all tests. I'm going to put them in a fallen state. And in fact, part of the consequence of that is that I'm going to have to go in there and pay the price for them. Otherwise, they're lost forever. Why would he go to such levels to legitimize love to such an extent? And I believe it's to do with this statement here. Because right now he's trusting us with a portion of his Spirit, a portion, which means we're getting a glimpse into his mind and heart. If you have the fullness of that Ruach, that means you have full access to his mind and heart. Do you look in the shadow picture? Do you just trust anyone with your deep, dark secrets? No, you don't. You build trust. I believe this is why Elohim is going to such great lengths. Let's build on that. Love is vulnerable. Love between a husband and wife actually makes them vulnerable to each other. Wives, the amount of power you have over your husbands, I don't think women fully realize how powerful the influence of their wives are over them. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. Because when husband and wife start to know everything about each other, which means you start to know the secrets of the other person. You start to, things that no one else knows. And there's a real vulnerability to that. And I actually believe this is one of the things that makes love real. Despite the vulnerability, a husband and wife trust each other with said vulnerability. Again, I believe this is what builds love up. It's one of the things that I love my wife for. I can trust her. I can speak openly with her in a way that I can with no one else. This vulnerability is a big part of what makes love real. Legitimate. I believe Elohim wants the love between him and his bride to be real and vulnerable. Again, what is it that the angels are longing to look into? What is your marriage a type and shadow of? Because we're created in his image. If Elohim's going to have a bride, he wants it to be real. And with that comes vulnerability. Vulnerability. What are you saying, Michael? That Elohim can be vulnerable? This is why the love of his bride needs to be proven and tested, especially from a fallen state. This is why it has to be from the fallen state. If I can trust you with the little, I can trust you with the much. And that includes the spirit. Again, let's remember what Paul said. The spirit searches all matters, even the depths of Elohim. With the fullness of the Ruach, that will search the fullness of his depths. That Elohim would be vulnerable. Look, to make the point, can Elohim be vulnerable? Did he enjoy seeing what happened to his people? It says that when he flooded the earth, it grieved him. It grieved him. He who establishes us with you in Messiah and has anointed us is Elohim, who also sealed us and gave the Spirit in our hearts as a pledge. The word there for Greek is deposit. Like you pay a down payment on something with the promise of the rest coming later. That's the word being used in the Greek. And again, in Romans 8:23, not only so, but even we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we ourselves also groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. Paul's telling you in two places, we don't have the fullness of the Spirit. We have a measure of it, like we have a measure of faith. We've been given a down payment, a deposit. If I can trust you with the little, then I can trust you with the much later. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know as I have also been known. Face to face. Look, who spoke to Elohim face to face? Moshe. This is bridal talk, face to face. Right now we see dimly. Why? Because we've been given a measure of the Spirit. We currently have the first fruits of the Spirit, the deposit. This is what allows us to partially know his heart, mind, and desires right now. With the fullness of his Spirit, we will know his heart, mind, and desires fully. Look, without being crude, this is why what sexual relations are a type and shadow of. There's being like uncovered and naked in front of each other, but on a spiritual level. Elohim will trust his bride so much, he will actually grant her full access to his heart. Think about that. Think about that. Why do you think now? Look, Elohim is perfect. He's not fallen. He's in eternity. If he's going to trust someone with his love, his heart, you can bet he's going to test it first, because he's the king of the universe. This is actually the greatest form of vulnerability. It's the greatest form of vulnerability. Why do you think he's testing his bride to the level he is? Why the fall? Let's start wrapping up. Elohim wants a bride and a helpmeet. She will help him in governing the eternal family. He needs to be able to trust her with his power and authority and with what he bought with his blood, i.e. the creation. He needs to be able to trust her with that. This requires his bride to overcome, to be like him, and to know what love is in all its facets. This has to be done from a fallen state. Only then are all these things real and assured and tested. Only then. This is why the fall had to occur. That's why he allowed it. The price is great, but the outcome far outweighs the cost. In Isaiah 53:10, it says, Yah was pleased to crush him, the great messianic prophecies of our King. He laid sickness on him that when he made himself an offering for guilt, he would see a seed. He would prolong his days and the pleasure of Yah would prosper in his hands. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous and he bears their crookedness. Look, do you think it pleased Elohim to see Messiah on the cross, like stripped to the bone by whips and scourges and then crucified? Did that please him? Or was the outcome of that what he wanted? In the same way, do you think it pleases Elohim to see what the fallen human condition can conjure up? Because it's evil and wicked. But what comes out of it? Like, husbands, what would you die for your brides? What's that a type and shadow of? Has Elohim taken accountability, responsibility, and consequence of his will, desires, and choice? Hopefully you're starting to get a peek into the desire of Elohim and why he would go to do all this the way he has. This is the final point I want to make. There's actually a greater consequence to this that no one thinks about. In Isaiah 65:17, it says, For look, I am creating new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come to heart. Okay? It says that the former things shall no longer be remembered. We read this as well in Ezekiel 18:32. I have no pleasure in the death of the one who dies, declares the Master Yah. So turn back and live, repent. Let me ask you this. Will Elohim be able to forget everything that happened here? It says he has no pleasure in the death of the one who dies, and we know there's a second death coming. Now, it says that the former things shall not be remembered nor come to heart, but does he get that luxury? Because he's Elohim. I do not believe he will have the luxury to forget. He will have to always carry that burden, that he has no pleasure in the death of the one who dies. And we're told that there's a second death. Remember, he died for his creation. He paid the price with his own blood. Yet there are some that will reject him, and he will have to bear the scars of that. Remember, Elohim grieves. He has emotion. Where do your emotions come from? A bride brings great comfort to her husband. Is this part of the reason why Elohim even wants a bride? Because he's going to have to carry. Remember, there's none like him. So he needs to know. He needs to find someone like him. So he creates this test called life. And something will come forth from that so that he doesn't have to be alone. Okay? But here's the problem. There's a price and a consequence to Elohim not being alone. And that is he's going to have to carry the burden. That there's going to be some who never made it. Do you think a bride would then bring great comfort to her husband then? Especially if she witnessed the test called life. You know, this is what the doctrines of men have robbed from us over all these times. This intimacy, this knowledge. And I really meant this when I said this, that today's teaching scratches on the surface. Today's teaching, I hope, is opening the door for deeper discussion, because there are things all over in Scripture that are right there that we read right over. Our faith is deeper, way deeper than what I've covered today. But this is something that, as the writer of Proverbs says, it's to the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter. It's to the glory of kings to search it out. I believe that a bride will seek, and she will go on this journey where she will start to find these pearls of great price. And then she will give everything she has for that pearl. Hopefully that brings a new understanding to that parable. You know, what I would recommend is what Yeshua says. Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open to you. Because the bride of Elohim will care about these things. And she will want, not for knowledge's sake, but for the sake of her Elohim. Anyway, let's stop here. And I really hope that this has been a blessing to you all. Amen.